Mr. Speaker, this NDP government is misleading Manitobans.
Right.
The budget delivered yesterday brings in a $300 million a year tax grab, and yet the planned deficit at the end of this fiscal year, $502 million, is virtually the same as the $504 million deficit budget this time last year. The finance minister says the $300 million a year will go all to new infrastructure. But the new money being spent in this budget is in operating funds for health and education and justice. I ask the Premier, will he table today the complete list of all the new infrastructure on which he plans to spend the new $300 million?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will spend $1.8 billion on capital this year versus $1.4 billion last year. That list of priorities will be identified. There will be estimates. The full discussion of that will occur. The member needs to know that when we put that money out there, it will make a difference. It will build new social housing units. It will build new schools. It will build new personal care homes. It will build new roads all across Manitoba, regardless of the constituency. It will do those things that protect Manitobans from floods at a time of imminent risk when we've had the third major risk in 5 years. $1.8 billion in the budget this year, Mr. Speaker.
And yet still a deficit this year of $500 million.
Yes.
Each year since the NDP came to power in 1999, the government has tabled an expenditure budget. Each year, at the end of the year, the NDP government has spent more than it budgeted, and this year it was $130 million more. The Premier said the 1% sales tax increase will be temporary. Does the Premier mean that it will be temporarily 1% and then permanently something else, like 2%?
Mr. Speaker, the sales tax is going to be the third lowest in Canada, Mr. Speaker. And just like the unemployment rate will be among the lowest in Canada, Mr. Speaker. And the participation rate of working Manitobans will be among the highest in the country at 69%. This budget will create jobs in Manitoba at a time of sluggish economic recovery and economic uncertainty. This budget will protect Manitobans from the threat of a third major flood risk in 5 years. $1.2 billion was spent in 2011. We will be there for Manitobans. We will not leave them alone at the time of peril during another flood risk in Manitoba. We will be there to support them. That's the promise we made. That's the promise we will keep.
Mr. Speaker, the NDP have brought in legislation to allow them to bring in a sales tax increase, but depriving Manitobans of a democratic referendum, which they should have. Manitobans are outraged. But the Premier now says a referendum is too expensive. Mr. Speaker, as a litmus test of public opinion, the Premier could call the Morris by-election and add a question to the ballot. Do you, as a voter, approve of the increase in the sales tax by 1%? I ask the Premier.
How would Mavis vote?
I ask the Premier.
Mavis wants his budget passed right away.
Order, please. I'm having a great deal of difficulty hearing the question trying to be posed by the Honourable Member for River Heights. I'm asking cooperation of the House to allow the member to ask his question. The Honourable Member for River Heights.
I ask the Premier, will he commit today to calling the Morris by-election this month and to give Morris residents a chance to vote on having an increase in the sales tax?
I was very pleased to be in Morris, Manitoba last Friday, Mr. Speaker, and I complimented the Mayor, Gavin Vanderlind, on the excellent work he's done providing leadership in that community against racist commentary by a very small group of people, by the homophobic commentary by a very small group of people, and the excellent leadership that community has provided with their citizens in fighting floods. And one of the things we saw in Morris, Manitoba, we saw a brand new Main Street. We saw brand new sidewalks through that community. We saw very significant investment in infrastructure in that community, Mr. Speaker, and now we're working on a long-term solution for that community. That community has a ring dike around it, Mr. Speaker, that never existed 12 years ago. That ring dike is to protect the people of Morris from the possibility of a serious flood risk, Mr. Speaker. We toured that community. We saw the materials necessary to protect that community. We saw the new Main Street. We saw a community that's got prosperity because we've invested in that community, Mr. Speaker, a growing community with good citizens.